Welcome back. Jeff Brandes served in the Florida Senate and is now the president of the Florida Policy Project. I wanted to speak to him about the fact that Governor Ron DeSantis has been talking about a plan to eliminate property taxes for more than a year, but he still hasn't presented anything to lawmakers.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to find that the governor has not yet proposed anything in writing, right? And that he's not put out a plan. He's not shown us the research. It's like the math doesn't work, and so he doesn't want to tell us this. This is the big challenge I think that legislators are grappling with is you've told us you want to get rid of property taxes totally. Then you've proposed $1,000 credit last year for property taxes, and then you've proposed, you've this thing has evolved 3 or 4 different times, so nobody even really knows what the target is. I think the governor has fired this bullet, and his staff is desperately trying to move the target in front of where his bullet has fired. And I think at the end of the day, the legislature really just needs to get its arms around, like, what is the scope of this? We don't know how 400 cities and 67 counties are going to react to this. They're all going to react differently. They all have different homestead levels of participation. And for some of them, it'll bankrupt them. And the governor has acknowledged this and had said, well, we'll just backfill it. But backfill it with what? The state is looking to run a multi-billion-dollar deficit over the next 2 years. So at the end of the day, I'm struggling to see how this is not the largest taking of home rule that we've ever seen in the history of Florida, because ultimately cities and counties are going to have to go to the state to get their budget approved.
The issue of not having a plan, you said something at the beginning of your answer, which I just want to highlight and go back to. Once you put numbers on paper, once you actually have a proposal, once you actually say, this is what I want to do, and this is how much money it's going to end up saving individuals, but also what it's going to cost those individuals, cities and counties. And once you start doing all that math, then it becomes real, and the effects of it become a lot more tangible, and there can be pushback.
Absolutely. At that point, you'll actually know what you're talking about. Right now, look, he has said everything from, I don't want you to have to pay rent on your house, but if you take out all of the taxes, including the school tax, right? Most of the proposals keep the school tax. So people are still renting their homes from the government. I just don't understand what, in his mind, a win is. And so at the end of the day, he needs to put out his own plan. He has thousands of people working for him. He's had over a year. He has stumped this all over the state. Why is it so difficult to put it in writing? Why isn't it so difficult to show your work? It makes no sense. And I think it's because as soon as he puts a plan out, it's a target that people will go after. And as long as he's talking about the hypotheticals, he doesn't have to really talk about the specifics.
He likes the headline. He doesn't like the actual work that has to be done.
This is a bumper sticker. This is not a plan. This is not a proposal. It's a bumper sticker. It is a random musing at this juncture. It's not a full policy proposal. We're talking about kind of changing the foundation of the tax system of the state of Florida. You would think that when you're going to modify a foundation, you would need an engineering study. We have no studies. We are doing this on a vibe. This is a pipe dream right now. Show us your work.
It seems to me that where we are probably ultimately heading is probably something on the ballot in November that perhaps increases property taxes or eliminates homestead property taxes, excluding education for seniors 65 and older, and maybe some incentives for first-time home buyers to make it easier for them to buy a home. Go ahead, jump in.
Joe, I think what you're just stressing is the problem that got us here. We have a patchwork quilt that we have built over generations of homesteaded property tax, and we've tried to squeeze the balloon in different ways. What you need is something that is a full-scale overhaul of the Florida property tax system. And that requires deep thought, something that you're not going to get done in a special session, that really needs research, reports, and backing to do it. But as we keep carving out these little special exceptions for all these different groups, it just adds one more patch to the quilt. And frankly, the quilt isn't working well for people. Listen, the people who aren't complaining about property taxes are the people who've lived in their home for 20 years. The people who are desperate in complaining about their property taxes are the people who bought in 2003, 2004, and are getting the full weight of the property tax. When you live next to somebody who's paying $2,000 and you're paying $10,000 in property tax, That's what's going on here in the state. And those are the people who are screaming the loudest. The people who've lived here for 20 years, you never hear a peep from them about property taxes.
What you do hear from them often is dealing with insurance and windstorm insurance, auto insurance, all the different versions of insurance in the state of Florida. We've seen insurance reform, or what they described as insurance reform. The governor and others have argued that we are now at a stabilized period, maybe even rates coming down slightly. Where do you see the insurance issue? And I don't get the sense, to be honest with you, that there's much appetite to do anything this session when it comes to insurance.
Well, I tend to agree with you. I don't think they're going to do anything major, but I don't think they need to do anything major. Let's just take one data point, which is the size and scope of Citizens property insurance. 2 years ago, when we had this conversation, Citizens was sitting at 1.4 million policies. 1.4 million policies representing about $500 billion of risk on their books. They're now down to and at that time, they only had $10 billion of cash. Now they're down to like 370,000 policies. So on the one metric that to me matters the most, the size and scope of Citizens is as low as it's been in 2 decades, which is pretty incredible that has occurred in the last 24 months. In addition, you've had 17 new companies start since in the last 24, 36 months. This is, we really rarely see these times in history where Florida has seen this much growth in new companies and this kind of reduction in Citizens. I think Citizens and their governor's office is actually surprised at how robust the market has been in attracting new companies. What we need now is a period of stability. We need to let the prices adjust. We didn't have any storms in 2025. Reinsurance prices, which insurance companies are required to buy from Bermuda and London, are falling like a rock. And that should play out in pricing over time. These companies, if they want to grow, they've got to get competitive with their policies. They've got to add more features to their policies, and they've got to bring their price down or at least be competitive in pricing. This is what we've seen. And they've got to put their service up on the back end. They've got to be able to resolve claims quickly. So I think the best thing the legislature could do is let it have another year. But there is nothing the legislature is going to mandate that is going to bring pricing down.
You talk about, 17 new companies being formed in the state of Florida to sort of offer insurance packages. You're actually involved in one of those. Talk to me a little bit about why you decided to get into the insurance game here in Florida and have a company of your own that's dealing with some of these things.
Well, in my time in the legislature, I learned a ton about the property insurance space and I made some great relationships. And so I thought that if we brought the right people together, the top talent in the state that I could find together, that this was the right time to launch an insurance company in Florida. Obviously, I was not the only person to have that idea. You have 16 other companies besides mine that have launched as well. But we think that now is the time. We think that the market is stabilized, that the litigation, which was the plague on Florida, has subsided substantially, and that it was time to get into this business and launch a company. And we thought that the right place to do it was Florida. That it's a growing state. It's a state where we know what the risks really look like on a hurricane basis, and we could attract really top talent.
You talked before, you mentioned just briefly about tort reform and bringing down the number of lawsuits that have been filed. And Florida had led all states. I think 80% of the litigation against property insurance companies were out of Florida. So nobody disagrees with the idea that there was a need for tort reform. But I do hear a concern that maybe it went too far and it has created a system that virtually bars individuals from being able to take their insurance companies to court if they believe that they are not being treated fairly.
Well, I think it's important to recognize.
Wait, let me just finish the question. Do you think that it went too far? And do you see that there is some movement to sort of bring back at least some level of rights for the homeowners to be able to sue?
Well, look, what Florida did was join 49 other states in having the exact same way that you would resolve these cases in 49 other states. So did we go too far by joining the 49 other states? Because Florida was the radical outlier with one-way attorney's fees. Now, the trial bar wants nothing more than to insert themselves back into the litigation factory of property insurance. And so they would love to do that. And they have members that are constantly pushing that and calling for that. The simple truth is that would be a disaster for the Florida market. If you want to see things transition right back to rising rates and failing companies, that's the pathway back there. But look, this has only been on the books for 3 years now. And what we've seen is the radical success, the reduction in citizens, the lowering of risk for Floridians, the increase in private companies. So listen, if you believe in capitalism and how that letting markets work, the best thing we can do is not turn back to the insanity that was the insurance market of Florida from 2018 to 2022.
We'll be right back.